Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the propaganda model. Okay, so a propaganda model was, developed by Edward S. Herman and Noam Chomsky. So they were two big influential figures. They were a lot known for their work on critical analysis and mainly it was critical analysis of the media and politics and stuff. Um, Edward S. Herman was a professor at Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. He was also an economist, so he specialized in corporate power, finance, and media. His work really dived into how economic factors influence media and affect behavior in the economy. Noam Chomsky was he was a renowned linguist. He was also a philosopher, cognitive scientist, historian, and political activist. Got a big repertoire. He was widely recognized for his critiques of U.S. foreign policy, also mass media. Together, Herman and Chomsky combined their expertise to examine how systematic biases and structure factors affected media content. Also, it led up to the propaganda model. So what is the propaganda model? Basically, after reading the work, the propaganda model it's a framework that basically explains how mass media in democratic societies a lot of the time is in control from the elite groups are a lot of the time in control of the mass media. It frames the news information in ways that kind of protect corporate and governmental power over the power of the people. The model also suggests that even without a lot of censorship, media organizations shape and filter content based on biases and stuff. So economic biases, money, people, these guys are for profit. So this process limits conversation, it limits dissent, limits ideas. And it also prioritizes elite interests. It causes, the media landscape that promotes agendas elites and powerful people. It also marginalizes alternative perspectives. So, the 4 filters. First one is size, ownership, and profit orientation. Basically, this filter, it talks about how essentially these companies are for profit, and so being a for-profit company, they want to appeal to their advertisers, the people that are providing them money. And so this filter highlights a lot of how, large-scale investments required to operate major media influences the media's behavior. So basically only corporations or super rich people are able to afford running these massive media campaigns and corporations, and this causes these entities to have a lot of power and a lot of control over what's being put out there in the media landscape. So it makes the diversification of ideas a lot smaller because these ownership structures, it's limited to content that supports existing power. It also minimizes critique and stuff. It causes narrow perspectives, and a lot of the time it reduces people challenging the status quo. Another thing, second one, is advertising. So advertising is basically just the primary source of revenue for a lot of these media outlets. It causes a lot of media outlets to favor content that appeals to desirable audiences, people that these advertisers are trying to sell to. And it keeps media audiences in a buying. It makes the media trying to keep people in a buying mood. So it limits, critical, or what's the word for? People that critique, controversial opinions is what I was looking for. So it basically, this causes a lot. This reduces, the amount of, the different type of opinions and stuff that media puts out there, and limits it to stuff that's more on the, widely reserved side, stuff that everyone would accept. Media outlets also media outlets lacking significant advertising struggle to survive. This also reinforces the idea that we, keep the population happy, and media is just for profit. Forcing mass media, this symbiotic relationship is basically what causes, governments and corporations. So, the third filter is, the third filter, okay. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. Media and power sources. So the symbiotic relationship between media and governments and corporations is the third filter. So media, it relies heavily on the information from these massive corporations as well as our own government. And so what this causes is a large dependency on the governments and media corporations. And so this is really what is basically the filter is its reliance on these corporations and government gives them a lot of power over the media themselves. So it causes, a dependency. It gives privileged access to information, and allowing powerful elites to influence media agendas causes them to dominate public perception and perspectives. Okay, the fourth one is flack, and flack is basically not a positive response to stuff. People will say, stop giving me flack. This is basically just explaining that well-funded individuals and organizations are able to criticize these narratives to cause censorship. Obviously, if you're getting a lot of censorship for the stuff that you're putting out in media, you're not going to want to keep putting it out. And so this is a form of, filter. It filters the type of media that people will put out. They don't want to put out controversial topics because they'll get a lot of flack for it. And so it also makes it easy for, elites and interest groups to, censor these types of medias. They're constrained by the ownership structures that are mainly driven by profit motives. And so therefore they will try to, go with the most profitable option. They select stories that align with whoever's providing them profit. And the problem with that is obviously this causes a lot of these other possible, perspectives to not be exposed. Controversial topics keeps the public in the dark, and keeping people happy isn't always the best option when we're talking about news and reality, because some stuff happens, stuff that isn't always happy. So yeah, these narratives are power and stuff, and so flack deters and punishes these corporations from straying the normal path, and it keeps them in line with the elites. So this systematic filtering results in a lot of critical voices and stuff being snuffed out. People are, critically analyzing, and it causes a lot of the time status quo to be overlooked. Okay, let's see, what's next? So, why audiences should worry. I think audiences should be concerned because it's not good for media to be monopolized by one class. It reduces the diversity in public perspective. It also just gives them complete control over what the public thinks. So the concentration of media ownership and the influence of advertising revenue and stuff, it creates a slurry of content that is fully driven to one single viewpoint and narrative. This lack of diverse information undermines democracy, obviously, because if people are being swayed by one bias or another, then they're not really making their own choice. If they don't have the full information, how can you make an educated decision based on something that has immense bias in it? And so It is not good for media to be monopolized by one class. Information, citizen, and so that's why I think it's super important for the public to be informed and not oblivious to media's control of them. It's very important for, a healthy democracy to have, true information and people can make their own decisions. The relevance of the propaganda model today. So the propaganda model remains highly relevant in today's media. It's honestly particularly just because the ongoing trends in media, everything's becoming one monopoly. Every company's buying each other out, which basically just shows the rise of one powerful elite single source of media. For example, all these digital platforms, social media, and obviously the ability of the internet, the invent of the internet. The added layer, it has a lot more complexity, especially with the internet involved. There's not just advertising, but there's also, different ways for people to make money. Everyone can put out their own media now, and everyone can see it. But still, their filters are still there. These filters, they prevent, varying ideas, the concentration of power in tech companies, especially as like Google, Microsoft, and Facebook, and obviously news companies as well. They use algorithms and stuff to amplify these biases. It creates echo chambers and just furthers the elite's control over information and dissemination. I'm sure you've heard of the term fake news and the challenges of misinformation in today's world, but this also just underscores the need to examine how media structures and economic driven profits influence how information reaches the public. Thank you. Have a great day.